Okay. ADIR Limited has an outstanding 100,000 par value bond with a 6% coupon interest rate. The bond was issued on 1st January 2010 with 30 years to maturity. If interest is paid semi-annually, find the value of the bond and indicate whether the bond is selling at a premium, discount, or par when the required rate of return is 5%, 6%, and 10%. Assume the date today is 31st December 2024. Okay, first things first, this bond was issued on 1st January 2010. It's got 30 years to maturity. So now the date today is 31st December 2024. So we have to find out. Okay. From 1st January 2010 to 31st December 2024. We have to count how many years is that? 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014. If you're using your fingers to count, you'll see that it's 15 years. Okay. From 1st January 2010 to 31st December 2024, it is 15 years. Okay. So it means how many years are remaining till the maturity of this bond? 30 minus 15 years. 15 years are remaining till maturity. Okay, so we're going to focus on those 15 years. Number two, the interest is paid semi-annually. So when interest is paid semi-annually, you have to half the interest rate. Okay. You also have to half the required rate of return, and you must multiply the number of years by 2. Okay, madam? When bonds are semi-annual, the interest rate, the required rate of return, those percentages, half them, and then the years, you're going to multiply them by 2. Because if you're paid twice in 1 year, in 15 years, you're going to be paid a total of 30 times. Since you are paid twice that year, so the interest rate is halved. Okay, you get half after 6 months, the other half after 6 months. Okay, yes. So the interest rate was 6%. So half of 6% is basically 3%. Okay, so there are two ways you can do it. You can first find the interest payment, then just divide it by 2. Or, as I said, you can have the interest rate. 6% divided by 2, you get 3%. Interest payment is the interest rate multiplied by the par value, which is 3% times par value is 100,000, which is 3,000. Okay, two ways to do it. You can calculate the interest payment. Once you get the interest payment for the whole year, divide it by 2, or divide the interest rate by 2 and then calculate the interest payment. Either way, you are going to get the same answer. I hope we're clear on that part. We're using first a 5% required rate of return. Okay. So this required rate of return, also we're dividing it by 2. And which is, remember here in the question, it says when the required rate of return is 5%, then 6%, and then 10%. Mm-hmm. Even this required rate of returns divided by 2. So 5% divided by 2, that's 2.5%. Okay. So once you've done these adjustments, okay, Okay, we can just put it in the formula for the bond. The price of the bond is the interest payment multiplied by the annuity factor. Because remember, the interest payments represent an annuity. Okay, so to get the present value, you have to multiply by the annuity factor plus the maturity value multiplied by this present value factor. Huh? No. So the interest payment, 3,000. Required rate of return, which is this KD just represents cost of debt. Cost of debt just means this is the required rate of return to the provider of the debt. Okay, so we're using 2.5%, which is 0.025. The number of periods, remember we multiplied 15 by 2, which gives us 30. Okay, because if in a year you're paid twice, in 15 years you'll be paid a total of 30 times. So raise it to the power negative 30 over 0.025 plus the maturity value 100,000 multiplied by 1 plus 0.025 to the power negative 30. When we do our calculations, our annuity factor here breaks down to 20.93. Our present value factor, 1.025 to the power negative 30, becomes 0.476. You multiply 3,000 times 20.93, you get 62,790. You multiply 100,000 by 0.476, you get 47,600. You add these two together and you get the price of the bond, which is 110,390.88. So this is how much you must pay for this bond. Okay. Then also in the question it asks, is the bond selling at a premium, at par, or is the bond selling at premium, discount, or par? So when a bond is selling at premium, what it means is how much you're paying for that bond is greater than the par value. If the bond is selling at a discount, it means what you're paying for the bond will be less than this par value. When the bond is selling at par, it means you are paying this same par value, this 100,000. You're paying, that's the amount you're paying for the bond. So in this case, we got 110,390.88. So it means the bond is selling at a premium because this amount is greater than the par value. Okay. And also another thing you need to remember, if the interest rate is greater than the coupon, the required rate of return, okay, if the interest rate is oh, if the interest rate is greater than the required rate of return, the bond will always trade at a premium. Okay, here the required rate of return was 5% and the interest rate was 6%, and then we found out that the bond is selling at a premium. Okay, so remember this law. If the interest rate is greater than the required rate of return, the bond will trade at a premium. So that even before you calculate the value of the bond, you should know by yourself that, okay, this one will be trading at a premium. Okay. Now here, the required rate of return is equal to the interest rate. Okay, required rate of return is 6%, interest rate is 6%. So let's find the value of the bond. Remember, 6% and 10%. Yes. The 6% divided by 2, and you're going to get 3%. Everything else, uh, everything else stays the same. Okay. Interest payment is still 3,000. Maturity value is still 100,000. It's just that this cost of debt will change in this formula here to be 0.03, which is 3%. Okay. So when we do our tabulations with the cost of debt of 3%, our annuity factor is 19.6. Our present value factor is 0.411. When we multiply 3,000 times 19.6, 58,800. 100,000 times 0.411, 41,100. 58,800 plus 41,100, you get 19,900. Okay, which can be rounded off to 100,000. Okay, if I wasn't rounding off these to one decimal place, we would have got an answer very close to 100,000. That's because I was rounding off too early here. That's why we got 99,900. But basically, it's the same as the par value. The required rate of return and the coupon rate or the interest rate are the same. So the bond is, when that is the case, a bond will be trading at par, meaning the how much you pay for the bond is the same as the par value. Okay. Then finally, when we go to the bond at 10%, when the required rate of return is 10%, we divide by 2, it is 5%. Interest payment still stays the same, 3,000. Maturity value still the same, 100,000. So that our cost of debt is going to be 0.05. Okay. When you get the annuity factor, you get 15.37. The present value factor, 0.2314. When you multiply 3,000 times 15.37, you get 46,110. 100,000 minus 0 multiplied by 0.2314, you get 23,140. So the value of the bond is 69,250. So since this amount is less than the par value, so the bond is trading at a discount. So when the required rate of return is greater than the interest rate, the bond is trading at a discount. So remember these three important things. When the interest rate is greater than the required rate of return, the bond is trading at a premium. When the interest rate and the required rate of return are the same, the bond will trade at par. But when the interest rate is less than the required rate of return, the bond will be trading at a discount.